So how many times did you write to John on Facebook? 4, 5, 6, the way I'm getting this?
I don't know, man. It could have been, I vaguely remember it was like 20 or 30 times all up, with the
Oh my God. Okay.
Hey, podcast listener, you're about to discover insider tips, tricks, and secrets to making more sales and converting more prospects into customers with email marketing. For more information about the Email Marketing Podcast or the Autoresponder Guy, go to dropdeadcopy.com/podcast.
Hey, it's John McIntyre here, the Autoresponder Guy, and it's time for episode 92 of the McMethod Email Marketing Podcast. And the whole point of this podcast is really to talk about email marketing, but it's been developing into something a little bit different. Well, it's just marketing. This is all the same thing, right? Marketing fundamentals. I'm applying it to email marketing, but at the end of the day, what you're learning here is stuff that you can apply anywhere in marketing. Okay, whether it's on your sales page, it could even mean a radio ad, right? It doesn't have to be with email. This is fundamental marketing principles, okay? Now today's a bit different. Today I'll be talking to Carl Juneau about, well, like I said, it's a bit different. So I'm not interviewing him. He's actually interviewing me. He emailed me. We've been chatting a while back. You'll hear the story in a second. We've been chatting for a while though, and he said, hey John, you've done almost 90 podcasts now, 92. This is episode 92. And I'm sure some people out there are wondering, how do you do a good podcast? I mean, how do you get the guests? How do you record it? What sort of microphone do you use? All these different things. And he said, why don't I interview you so people can hear from you about sort of your take on podcasting? So I was like, hell yeah, man. Sounds cool. Sounds like a cool idea. So here we are. You'll hear him in a minute. We're going to get on. I'll give him a sort of a quick little intro. But then we're going to flip the tables, and he's going to interview me. So today you're going to discover not so much just the email stuff, but this is a bit on how I get the guests that I do, how I structure the podcast, how I record it, the exact microphone that I use, some of this stuff, so that if you too want to grow your business with podcasting, you can do it with exactly what you're going to learn here. So that's it. To get the show notes for this episode of the McMethod Email Marketing Podcast, go to themcmethod.com/92. Now, I've got this week's McMaster's Insight of the Week right here. Now, Julian has been in McMaster since the beginning. He's one of the members inside McMaster's. Like I said, he's been there since the beginning, and he has been smashing it. When he first came to me, he was a struggling student trying to put some stuff together, trying to make a little bit of money online so he could fund his studies. And after he went through the McIntyre Method email program and he went through some of the other courses inside McMaster's, now, as of, I think, a month or two ago, he's up to $5,000 or $6,000 per month with his business. So this has gone from being just a sort of a side hobby, just paying, helping him pay for his studies, to now it's a serious business. It's still small, but it's kicking him along, and this is more than just paying for his studies. This is becoming like a one of those lifestyle businesses. So he can spend more time with his wife and his kids and do all the things that he wants to do in his life. So, and I think the insight there is really that when you take someone like Julian, when you come into a program, whether it's mine and my training or anyone else's, and you sit down and you apply, you execute on it, you're going to get results. It is that simple, and any successful person is going to tell you something to the same effect. Okay, it doesn't matter whether it's mine or any of the other email guys out there, or launch guys or online guys or whoever. Just make sure that when you pick something that you execute on it and you do it, and you're going to get the results sooner or later. There's going to be bumps, there's going to be challenges, but you're going to get there, because that's what Julian really excels at, is taking action. He's been, absolutely amazing in terms of, he comes to me, says, John, what do you think I should do with this? I go, well, try this one. He goes and does it. A lot of people aren't like that. A lot of people don't take that kind of action. They're not that committed, but Julian is, and that's why he's gotten that result. So if you want some of these, if you want access to the resources that Julian's used to build his business, you will have to join McMaster's. McMaster's, it's basically a private membership community. There's access to all the training products I've created, including the McIntyre Method and several other products. Plus, there's a private forum where you can ask questions from the other members and myself. I'm in there a lot. And just a great way to learn. Yeah, that's that. That's at themcmethod.com. In the top menu, there's a link to, I think, members. It should be pretty simple to find. Look forward to seeing you in there. Now, the last thing, and then we'll get into this interview, is reviews. If you want to help me get the word out about this show, if you really want to make my day, because when I read reviews, it really puts a smile on my face and it makes all this worthwhile. Or you can just send me an email and just say thanks. But ideally, please jump over into run on over to iTunes and search for the McMethod Email Marketing Podcast. Leave me a review. Tell me what you think about the show, and you will seriously make my day. Anyway, that's it for now. Let's get into this interview with John McIntyre on How to Grow Your Podcast. It's John McIntyre here, the Autoresponder Guy. I'm here with Carl Juneau, a podcast listener. who's actually been on the list, on the email list for, I can't remember, even maybe since the beginning. Carl showed up, and he just started replying to my emails. I think he came through Ben Settle. And since then, we've kind of had this back and forth banter about marketing and especially raw eggs. He doesn't like the fact that I eat raw eggs. I've had a lot of conversations about that. Maybe he'll bring that up today. Anyway, we're doing a bit of a different podcast today. Carl wanted to flip the tables a bit. Instead of me interviewing someone else, he wanted to interview me about podcasting because he figured, and I think he's right, that you as the listener might be wondering if why podcasting is so cool, why I do it, all that kind of stuff. So he's going to be interviewing me in this one, and we'll see what happens. I've never done this before on my own podcast. So I don't know how this is going to go. We're gonna cross our fingers and hope it rocks. So that's that. I'm going to give it over to Carl because he's got an intro since he's manning the podcast. Carl, how you going, man?
I'm good. What about yourself, John?
Fantastic, man. Fantastic. It's good to have you on here.
Yeah, that's great.
It's good to do. I don't know. I'm a bit nervous, man. I don't know what to expect here, but let's do it.
It'll be okay. Don't worry. Raw eggs are bad for you, by the way. But let's keep this for another time. So yeah, my name's Carl. I've been listening to your podcast since day one, and I consider myself perhaps one of your greatest fan. I'm a Business Online 2 owner, and listening to your podcast all this time, I've been starting to think maybe I should start my own podcast. And I've been wanting to ask you these questions about podcasting, and I thought, well, maybe other listeners might benefit from this, and maybe they wonder if they should start their podcast too. So this is what we're going to be talking about today. And for the people who don't know you, I wrote a little intro, so here we go. John's a copywriter from Australia. He started out copying sales letter by hand when he was in the Philippines doing marketing for a hotel in exchange for staying there for free. He then moved to Thailand, branded himself as the autoresponder guy, and started his email marketing podcast. His podcast first aired on May 17, 2013, and he's since published 81 episodes at the time of this recording. He's had top copywriter guests, including John Carlton, Bob Bly, Michael Fortin, and David Garfinkel. He's also had top online business owners like Vishen Lakhiani, James Tromko, and Russell Brownson. And today you're in for a real treat because John's going to reveal his best-kept secrets for building a successful podcast, growing your email list with your podcast, and adding money to your bottom line. So John, please start by telling us a little bit about yourself. Who are you? How did you get started? And what do you do now?
I mean,
how's that?
So I'm impressed, man. I mean, you did your research right there. It's just strange to be introed on my podcast. But anyway, let's roll with it. Yeah. My name is John McIntyre. Like you said, who am I? I got started in the Philippines. I mean, it's a great intro. Doing the marketing for the resort. But to bring it to the podcast, because I started, handwriting sales letters, taught myself to write copy while in the Philippines. That led into a sort of a freelance copywriting business. And around, I think it was like March, April, May. No, that's right. So what happened? March last year, I'm thinking, I want a product. I'm kind of bored with this client work stuff. I want to have some product and some passive income. So I go create a product, and because I was, it was the first time I'd created a marketing product and I wasn't sure how it was going to go, I wanted to hedge my bets. So I was like, well, I'm going to go record a whole bunch of interviews with Andre Chaperone and Jay White and these famous copywriters and email marketers, because I thought even if the product's not that great, people at least get the interviews and they can't be angry at me. So I did that.
I saw your product and I was like, oh, I want these interviews. I was glad that you were right about that.
There you go. And did the product, did a JV with, Andre promoted it to his list, which I was surprised by at the time, but that worked out pretty good. But the thing that blew me away the most was how easy it was to get 12 guys to do an interview with me. It was Ben Settle, Jay White, a whole bunch of, James Tramko, guys that I thought, at that time in my life, unreachable, were just an email away and just saying, hey, do you want to do an interview? I've got this product that's going out and you'll get a bit of publicity. And they're like, oh yeah, that sounds great. Then I get them on the podcast and I get to basically, it's like free consulting. You don't phrase it that way, but I'm like, well, let's talk about this, about what I want to talk about, and we get to mention your business at the end of the podcast, and it'll go out to, at the end of the interview, and then it will go out to a few people who buy the product. And they're like, yeah, sure, that sounds like a great idea. And then we get on, we hit record, and I just quizzed them about my business problems. So it's podcast. So what happened, how that led to a podcast is 3 months later, it was a month or two later, I was like, man, how easy was that? That was really easy. Maybe I should start a podcast and go after these guys and do interviews with them. How hard can it be? So, yeah, that's sort of the story of where the podcast started. Does that answer the question?
It does, absolutely, and it answers some of the questions I had later for you. Maybe we could jump right into it. I was wondering, how do you get such high-profile guests? I mean, you've had John Carlton, who's one of my personal heroes, Perry Marshall, you had James Schramko twice. As we said, you had Vishen Lakhiani, Bob Bly, Michael Fortin, you had Brian Kurtz, Daniel Levis. I mean, how do you get these guys?
This is one of probably the most common questions I get about podcasting from when I meet people at conferences or people email me and they say, I'm really impressed with these guests. And I wish there was some magic secret to it. I wish I could say I was really cool or did something special or had some special ability. But I'm just annoying. I email the crap out of these people until they either say, no, I'm not doing it, or they say yes. It's like, well, here's the exact process I follow, right? I can get most people via email. If I can't, I can usually get them on Facebook. So if I get them on email,
let's talk about John Carlton. How does that went?
How did that go? Okay, so I Facebooked him because I couldn't find his email address. Didn't know how to do that. So he's impossible to contact via email, and I still don't have his email address. And you'll find out why in a second. Emailed it, messaged him on Facebook. He says, I don't think he replied at first, but Facebook has that little feature where it tells you if they read your message. So I think he was reading the message, and a lot of these guys do read these messages, and they don't always reply. There's some other guys I've contacted who I'm still hassling. But anyway, so he eventually was saying, I'd follow up a week later and be like, hey man, what about this podcast? Another week later, hey man, what about this podcast? And a couple of weeks later, he eventually responded and said, talk to my assistant. Here's the email address. So I emailed the assistant, and now it's on email. And I think at first she didn't really reply. I could probably actually bring up the email and tell you exactly what I said, and then how many emails I actually sent them.
So how many times did you write to John on Facebook? 4, 5, 6? The way I'm getting this?
I don't know, man. It could have been. I vaguely remember it was like 20 or 30 times all up, with the email.
Oh my God. Okay. So that's really the trick, is you never let go.
I mean, pretty much, man. You just there's no, like I said, there's no secret to it. You just email and don't. I mean, I don't do it every day. I mean, you could do that, but I do it there's a thing in my to-do list every Friday or I think it's Mondays right now. It's go through the podcast label in Gmail. So what happens is, say I email John Carlton's assistant. Maybe she doesn't reply, but before I send it or after I've sent it, I label that email as podcast. And then a week later, I come back and I go through my podcast tab. And anyone that hasn't replied to me, I send them another email and just say, hey, did you get my email? And
okay, so you follow up once a week.
Yeah. Sooner or later, here we go, Diane, John Carlton's assistant. Looks like I sent her 3 emails at first, and then she replied, and then I replied with her with the details, and then she forgot about me again. So I went and emailed her again, and I was like, here's this. Hey, Diane, we spoke on Facebook. Here's the details. And then another email. Diane, any update on this? And then a week later, Diane, can you get back to me on this? I'd love to know if John's interested. And a week later, hey, Diane, any update on this? A couple weeks later, Diane, question mark. And then another week later, Diane, any update? I'll keep following up. And then another week later, Diane, any update on this? I just kept saying more or less the same thing.
Yeah.
And then I think it was after, I think it says here something like 10 emails, 13 emails or something. She's like, hi, John, thanks for getting back to me. Thanks for writing in. Let's see if we can get this interview scheduled. So then we finally scheduled it. So he was a tough nut to crack, right? That's not typical.
Sure, yeah.
But that's how you get some of these guys. Like John Benson's coming up, actually. Well, actually, by the time this episode goes live, John Benson would have been live maybe a month or 2 ago or something. And I think he was a bit tricky to get in touch with. So some of them are hard, some of them aren't.
Wow, I'm kind of surprised. I said 4 or 5 times because that would have been probably the number of times that I have followed up with John or anyone. But you're saying you followed up like 30 times before you get anywhere.
You just keep going.
That's probably the secret then.
I reckon that's the total secret, man. You just keep following up and never stop.
Right, and it doesn't you don't have to write 3-page letters. It's just Diane question mark.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like if you keep, I figure that you treat them like people. So if you reply and you give them this long-winded sales pitch about why they should get on the podcast, you sound like a friggin' needy, 16-year-old dude who's trying to persuade some girl to sleep with them. You really just need to be like, hey, look, I sent you an email. Did you get it? So I've still been going on Harlan Kilstein. I think we've had 40 or 50 emails. And he won't reply for 20 emails, and then we'll have a bit of banter for a few. How he's telling me he's not going to do it, he's never going to do it, or whatever. And then we go back, and then he disappears for a while, and he eventually gets back to me, and I'm working on him. So
Oh, good. Okay, that answers it. Okay, let's zoom out a little bit because the first set of questions I wanted to ask you was about podcasting in general as a strategy to build your business. I'm a business owner. Will starting a podcast make me money, or should I be doing something else? What's the most effective thing? Because everybody want to do the 4-hour work week. So what should I be spending my time on? Do you think podcasting is one of the top strategies for growing a business?
No, not at all. I mean,
you serious?
I'm serious, man. Like,
okay.
if you want to be able to link, if you want to make like sales today or make money today, podcasting is a terrible idea. But
okay.
And I found it really hard to connect the podcast to ROI in terms of, like, I can't really track how many people are coming to my site and signing up to my list and buying my products via the podcast. Though, because people just go and type in my, the main URL, and I could have a coupon code and there's some tricky things I could do. But for the most part, it's quite difficult to track the ROI. With that said, however, a year and a half into it, we're coming up to episode 81, 82 or whatever just went live, and from like a long-term business point of view, it's absolutely incredible. It's opened doors for me in ways that I had no idea. Like, it's getting me access to guys and networks and groups of people that I would never have thought I'd be able to get into. And unless I for like 5-10 years or something like that, because people see me as this, people listening to this is kind of like the magic source of podcasting, is if I can get on the phone with John Carlton and talk about marketing with him, or Perry Marshall and Bob Lyon, hold my own, and have a bit of banter back and forth and build rapport with them, that's me showing the listener that I know my shit. And it's not me persuading someone, it's not me using sales copy, it's not me using tricks to make them think that. I'm literally demonstrating the fact that I know what I'm talking about, and that's what makes podcasting so powerful. It's not. That's the catch, is that it's not an instant thing. If you want money today or this month, go and do pay. Take some money, go and do paid traffic, and build a sales funnel and test it. That's probably the fastest. If you're willing to risk the money, that's probably the fastest way to, I'd say, to get money online. But from a long-term perspective, podcasting is freaking awesome.
Okay, interesting. All right, let's get back to podcasting itself and the interviews you do. How do you decide which questions you ask your guests?
I told you before this. I actually, when I first got started podcasting, I used to plan things out. I do like a 15-minute, half an hour, worth of research on the guest. And these days, I don't do any of that. I don't prepare. I don't do research. And this applies to everyone. Like, I think what I've realized for myself, what works for me, and this is not going to work. This is not necessarily going to work for everyone else, but what my groove is, or what works for me, is I get on the phone and I have like a 5-minute chat with the guest about something. I usually have an idea of what they're about or what their thing is. Like yesterday, I spoke to one of the guys from Kajabi, and I knew it was a membership platform, but I've never used it and I don't really know much about it. So I just sort of got a bit of a handle on what to talk about first. Got a couple ideas, and I don't even make questions. I just write a couple bullet points, and then we do I'm just like, all right, well, let's hit record and let's have a conversation and see where it goes. And that, to me, has led to more interesting podcasts than planning it out. And an interesting one was Bond Halbert. We did a couple of weeks back, or a month or two ago, something like that. That was a very casual podcast. I didn't plan that out at all, but I had a number of people come back to me after that and say that was one of the best podcast episodes they'd heard.
Wow!
So I've had other times where I put all this effort into it and really plan it out and think about the questions, and it doesn't really resonate at all. So I've found that what really works is being really honest, being vulnerable, getting onto topics like getting deep into stuff, like getting really like authentic, talking about like dreams and goals and feelings and emotions and all that, instead of just talking about here's how to optimize a landing page.
Mm-hmm. Good tip. Awesome. Next question. What's your strategy? What has been your number one strategy to get more people to listen to your podcast? How do you grow your audience? I see you ask people for reviews on iTunes. Is that the best strategy?
I honestly don't know. I haven't put that much I don't put that much effort into promoting the podcast, and I know I should. What I do is from the start, I released 3 episodes at once. That usually gets you into new and noteworthy, because someone listens to one, if they like it, they're going to download the other 2. So you get a bump in downloads. But other than that, all I've really done for the podcast is published it each week, made it really easy to find on the website, and every week, I email the list about it. That's pretty much all I know. What I want to do moving forward is set up a Facebook campaign to basically everyone in internet marketing, and just rotate a different podcast every 3 days to them. I just haven't, and spend I don't know, 10, 20, $50 a day. Maybe track the email conversions on it. It's going to, like I said, it's going to be quite hard to track. I mean, you could sort of correlate that to ROI, but it's a little bit tricky because it's like a front end thing.
I've seen Ben Settle set up a different website. He's got bensettle.com and he's got bensettlepodcast.com, I think.
Okay.
So now on his podcast, he tells people to go to bensettlepodcast.com. So I'm guessing that any signups that he gets on the lists over there, he attributes to his podcast. That would be an easier way to track ROI.
Yeah, there's ways to do it. Like if I did a Facebook campaign, I could use tracking links, UTM codes, and variables in the links, and I could find out how many opt-ins the Facebook campaigns are getting. But it's not. It hasn't really been a priority, right? Like right now, what I'm doing day to day, when we're recording this, is sort of setting up some technical stuff, like moving SEPA payment processor, the sales funnel, some affiliate tracking for the community, McMaster's, the community that I have. So once that's all done, then that's when I'm going to go back. Right now, all the Facebook stuff's paused, and I haven't been focusing on it, but I'm getting all the back end stuff sort of. Once that's done, then I'm going to go back to Facebook and fire up the campaigns for the sales funnel and for the podcast. And I've got another cool idea. This is not podcast related though. Here's what you do, right? Let's say you go into like Traffic and Conversion Summit or any of these. Like I went to a conference recently in Bangkok, and one thing I didn't do this time, but I think would be great for a conference is, let's say you go on. Maybe you're a speaker, maybe you're not, but you want to find a way to get yourself known among the guests. You find a way to scrape a list, or maybe just go through the guest list and find everyone on Facebook. Get a VA to do it. Create a custom audience on Facebook, and then create 5 really strategic pieces of content that make you look like a freaking badass. And then rotate 5 these 5 pieces of content to them every 3, 4, 5 days or whatever to this audience for 1 or 2 months out from the conference. And then when you get to the conference and you introduce yourself, they're like, "Oh yeah, I saw you on that blog post. Yeah, you're that guy who did X, Y, Z." So yeah, something I'm gonna try.
Good one. Yeah, I think you can do all sort of crazy stuff with Facebook, but maybe we should start another podcast about this. I think we have only a couple minutes left, so I'd like to ask you a few technical questions. My first one was, what microphone do you use to record your podcast, and where did you buy it?
I use we're not doing video. I was going to show the video thing, but I use a Logitech. It's literally a $20 Logitech headset that USB headset. And I've done podcasts on the side of busy city streets. I've done podcasts with motorbikes going past, and you can hear the motorbike in the background. The first time I did one with Ben Settle, you could hear chickens in the background, and he's like, "What the hell is that? Is that a rooster?" I'm like, "Yep, welcome to Thailand." So yeah. I mean, the reason I mention it, and the reason I sort of emphasize it, is that people think you need this big microphone and a boom stand and all that crap. And I'm using a $20 mic. I've done this for every single episode I've recorded, and you whack some compression on there and a bass booster. You can do this in Audacity or any sort of audio editing. Audacity is a free one, so free software. You can make yourself sound like a radio voice and a $20 headset. It's pretty easy.
Excellent. That was my next question. So which program do you use to record your podcasts? And you seem to be doing some editing with them afterwards.
Right. So what happens is I do the recording happens with something called Skype Recorder. It's made by a company called Ecamm, which is ECAMM. So if you go Ecamm Call Recorder, I think it's ecamm.com, you can download it's like a plugin or an add-on for Skype. It's about $20 from memory, and that'll allow you to record Skype calls. And one quick tip though, if you do download that, one of the crazy things is that it records in .mov format, which is like a single track or something. So when you first listen to it, you can only hear the other person's voice. And it's like, oh man, I think I messed up the whole podcast, and you record on one side. But if you convert it to MP3, it actually works okay.
Oh, so you're manually converting every podcast into MP3?
Well, yeah. So what happens? The software that you get, the Skype Call Recorder, you have to write it spits out an MOV file. It must be a mono or something like that. I'm not a tech guy when it comes to audio stuff. It's some sort of file where you can't hear both tracks at the same time.
Yeah.
When you convert it to MP3, it makes it all into one track, and you can hear both voices. So that's just the tip. If you go do it, don't freak out when you can only hear one voice. And then as for editing it, I'm on Mac. I use Audacity, which is a free software. You can use, Audacity does the thing. What I used to do, the workflow was get the MP3 out from the call, jump into Audacity and add, you edit out the ums and ahs if you're a bit neurotic like that. You want to get rid of the ahs and the ums and make it sound real professional. And then also I add EQ, so get the bass boost, turn the bass up, and then put some compression on there. It really makes you sound real professional. Like that's how you get the radio effect coming in. And then I'd go into GarageBand and just sort of align all the different components. Like here's the intro, and here's the sound transition here, and then here's the actual interview, and here's the outro. So, you can use, there's paid software as well. I think one's called, my friend runs a podcast editing agency, and I think they use an Adobe software. I can't remember what it's called. But yeah, it's paid or free. It's really easy, man. Podcasting, you really don't need much at all. And what's great is, I don't even edit the podcast now. John Manning, actually, he's here in Chiang Mai, Thailand with me. He actually edits it. So he'll be listening to this at some point. And he's going to be editing out the ums and ahs and putting the bass and the compression in that too. So what's great about podcasting is that you can, write up a pretty, just an SOP, a process document, and then you don't even have to do it. You can, so basically outsourcing it's pretty easy too.
And then last question, how do you post your podcast on iTunes?
It's just
is it any complicated?
What you have to do, you get an RSS feed, and so what you do, so you set up, because you have to set up your podcast on your site with like a podcasting WordPress plugin. Okay. And what happens with that, that creates an RSS feed for the podcast. You create a category, like a WordPress category called podcast. That creates an RSS feed for that category. Then you submit your RSS feed to iTunes. And then what happens, you go back to your blog, and every time you post a new post in the podcast category, there'll be a section to add the MP3 in WordPress. And then when you publish that post, the RSS feed will update, and then that'll ping iTunes. That'll ping iTunes, and iTunes will just update the feed. So iTunes they don't host any of this stuff. They just index. They're really just indexing RSS feeds of podcasts.
Great. So that sounds pretty easy.
Yeah, it's super easy.
John, we're right on time. Thanks. Yeah, I know you say this to your guests all the time. Seriously, thanks a lot for answering these questions. I had a few surprises on the, finding high-profile guests where just persistence is the key, and not, some easy peasy persistence. As some hardcore persistence, but I'll apply this, and then how podcasting is not a short-term strategy, but like you found that it doesn't really make you money in the short term, but really opens you doors for the long run. So I guess that kind of puts it another way in my mind. Thank you. I really see you becoming one of the top email marketing experts in the world. I think you're doing a great job with this podcast. So keep it up. And I hope other business owners like me listening to this interview were able to make up their minds, or at least help them think about starting another podcast. So thank you very much, Sean.
Thanks, Carl. Man, it's been good to be on the show. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Hey everybody, thanks for listening. If you want to discover more insider tips, tricks, and secrets about driving sales with email marketing, sign up for daily email tips from the autoresponder guy. Go to dropdeadcopy.com/podcast. Sign up, confirm your email address, and I'll send you daily emails on how to improve your email marketing and make more sales via email. You'll find out why open rates don't matter, and the 7-letter word that underlies all effective marketing, and much more.